Hey guys, welcome to the show. As usual, if you'd like to support this channel, there are PayPal and Patreon links in the info box below. Got a good one lined up for you today. Division in Israel. Where is there not division, Betty?
Well, division is nowadays everywhere you look, even within families, huh?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
You're right.
It's rampant nowadays. So maybe a good topic to go over today, huh?
I guess we'll go over that today then.
You sound a little bit reluctant to go over this.
Nah, it's okay.
Yeah? What do
Yeah.
you expect? What are you expecting?
What am I expecting? Division.
Yeah, in general. I mean, if you hear like the division in Israel, what sort of comes to mind to you?
Multiplication, addition, and subtraction.
That's no, it doesn't. If you're talking about the Bible, I don't think that the Bible is a calculation device. Although it's calculated.
It is calculated, isn't it? Ah, you like that little turn of phrase, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I pulled a sort of a 10th man on you.
Yep, nah, that was a little deeper than 10th man. Let's see what we got here.
What do you got?
I was just looking at the screen. We ought to just jump right into it.
Right now?
You want to jump in right now? Well, we can't do it right now because you got nothing on your screen.
Yeah, exactly.
You can stop matters quick.
Yeah, well, let's not be a spoil sport, huh?
All you have to do is not share your screen, and then I can't start.
Yeah, well, I have it up right now. If you say, okay, I'm going to put it on screen, I can begin the first slide.
That's up to you. It all, because this is your presentation. You can do as you please. If you want to take a break for a couple minutes, let everyone get in their seats.
Yeah, well, then we have to have a mild conversation going.
We got Jose. We got a whole bunch of at ease. At ease. We got a whole bunch of people in chat now. Jose Mesa, haven't seen you. These guys just pop up. We got Arwin, we got the Adam Meekin, we got Level Up. We got a bunch of people in here.
That's good. Yeah.
No pressure.
And that's for a Thursday, huh?
That's for a Thursday. Yeah. Yep, they're waiting to hear this. Division in Israel.
Okay. Well, good. Let's try this then.
You want to try it?
Yeah, give me a try.
All right, go to full screen. We're trying something new today. Let's see if it looks good. Oh, that was a nice one. Go back out, and then I'll put you over, and then we'll do the radar thing again. Go ahead, go back out. That was really cool. I liked it. Okay, hold on. Okay. Stop. Now I'm going to share.
Yeah.
There you go. Now do it. Look at that. Radar love. All right, Betty, it's all yours.
That's from the Golden Earrings. It's a Dutch group.
Listen to you. Really? Are they from Dutchland?
Yeah, they are.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I did. Maybe I'll have to reconsider liking that song.
Well, it is a good song, so why would you reconsider?
Yeah. All right. Yeah, we're trying a new presentation style today, and it looks pretty. What you rumpusing me for?
Oh, I'm thinking we're speaking about a band, right? And now I say two bands.
Oh, two bands. Yeah, listen to you.
Yeah.
It's all synergistic.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I was saying before I was interrupted with the two bands, we're trying a new presentation screen today, and let's see how this goes. I'll be monitoring it during the presentation, but it seems to be good. So, off to you, Betty. It's all yours.
Okay. Yeah, so last time we went over the spiritual division in the beginning, which was more like divisions between families within the genealogy, I think, from Adam to Jacob. And Jacob has, of course, had 12 sons, and that was basically all of Israel. So I want to pick it up from there. So division in Israel. And we go to Genesis 32. And I'm going to read a bit. I am not worthy of the least of all of the mercies and of all of the truth which thou hast showed me unto thy servant. For with my staff I passed over this Jordan, and now I have become two bands. Deliver me, I pray thee, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau. For I fear him, lest he will come and smite me, and the mother with the children. And thou sayest, I surely do thee good, and make thy seed as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. So we find here the blessing again that lay upon Jacob. And I've expressed this already in a previous presentation. And he says here, I've now become two bands. And there we go. What does it mean, two bands? And you have the Strong's number of Hebrew, and it means makana. I think I might be pronouncing it wrong, of course. But when we go and see what that can mean, it means camp, host, company, tents, army, bands. This is translated as bands twice in the King James, battle, and drove. So it means two camps or two bands or two camps. So what happened before Jacob passed over the Jordan? So let's go back a little bit over what happened before he went to that place where he wrestled the angel or God. Well, first of all, Jacob stole the blessing from his brother Esau, so he had to flee from him. And Jacob began his journey from Beersheba to Bethel, and there he dreamed of the ladder, and he had that stone that I said, well, that might be under the thrones of the royal kings in England. And from Bethel, he traveled to Haran to his uncle Laban near Padan Aram, and he stayed there for 20 years. So he stayed there for 7 years for Leah, who worked there for his uncle Laban, 7 years for Rachel, and 6 years to get cattle, right? To get his sort of wages. We can read that in Genesis 31, verse 41. Thus I have been 20 years in thy house, and I served thee 14 years for thy 2 daughters, and 6 years for thy cattle. And thou hast changed my wages 10 times. 10 is an important number also in the Bible. And then we go to Genesis 31, verse 3. And the Lord said unto Jacob, return unto thy land of thy fathers and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. So he was basically ordered by God to just, after the 20 years, to go back to his home country. But of course, when he went home, he would sort of encounter his own brother again, which he fled from. So he was kind of afraid how his brother would take it if he came back with all his wives and his wealth and of the cattle and all that. Okay, and then we go to these passages. And Laban went to shear sheep, and Rachel had stolen the images that were her father's. And Jacob stole away unawares to Laban the Syrian, in that he told him, not that he fled. So he fled away because God sort of said, well, get out of there and go back to your native country. But Rachel had stolen images, so Laban later on sort of went to Jacob, and they had a little discussion, and that amounted in a sort of a name called Mount Gilead. So he took his brethren with him and pursued after him 7 days' journey, 7 days again, and overtook them in the Mount of Gilead. Now Rachel had taken the images and put them in the camel's furniture and sat upon them. And Laban searched all the tent and found them not. I find it very interesting that Rachel stole images and they couldn't find them. And it seems maybe insignificant, but I think it's very significant for later on. So I hope, John, if I forget to mention this later on, that you bring this up again so that I can later on say why I think that this is important.
You're asking me to remember something?
Yeah, write it down or something.
Go on.
Visual images. Okay. So Mount Gilead meaning perpetual fountain or heap of testimony. Because Gilead, you find Gilead a couple of times mentioned in the Bible. So why did Jacob mention this so specifically with the two bands, right? So we read the reason in Genesis 32 in verse 7, a couple of verses earlier. And then it says, then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people that was with him, and the flocks and the herds and the camels into two bands. And he said, if Esau come to one company and smite it, then the other company which is left shall escape. And so how did Jacob divide his family? And he said, and he put the handmaids and their children foremost, and Leah and her children after, and Rachel and Joseph hindermost, according to the importance for Jacob. And the two handmaids were not his legal women. Then Leah, who he loved less than his first love, Rachel. So he loved Rachel the most, so they put her at the last post, basically, because if the first gets sort of attacked, then at least the one that he loved most, he could be able to save, right? Could be rescued.
I like that. He put them up at point.
The other ones, yes.
That is, I didn't see that in there. That's okay. Good job. Go ahead.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in Genesis 32, verse 1 and 2, and Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, this is God's host. And he called the name of that place Mahanaim, two bands or two camps. So we see here a bit of the landscape of Israel. And you can see here that this is the Jabbok River, and this is the Jordan River here. And this is Gilead. They say, right, because they have to do this by, of course, excavating and seeing what worked, of course. And sometimes they get it wrong, and sometimes they get it good, I think, because they have to discover, of course, the correct names and things. And I've seen different maps with how this sort of is laid out. So, but the river Jabbok is kind of known. And you had, of course, Peniel and Mahanaim, and that's where it is situated. So and Jacob went on his way, and the angel of God met him, and Jacob saw him and said, this is God's camp. So he called that place Mahanaim. So even the place where he proclaimed that was given the name two camps, two bands, basically, right? So he had to divide his family into camps, and he calls that place also two bands or two camps. And you see that also as a sort of a trail through the Bible, that every place that one of these important people that they discuss in the Bible are situated, then they call usually the name that they are staying sort of a name which sort of was on their mind, what happened there. So God's camp was to say in the case of God's host, right? So my thought is Jacob presents God's plan for the future. God gives us a message in a covert way. So let's follow this trail and see what we can find. So fast forward, we see the following happening to Joseph. In Genesis 37, verse 23 to 27, it says, "And it came to pass, when Joseph was come unto his brethren, that they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was on him. And they took him and cast him into a pit. And the pit was empty, there was no water in it. And they sat down to eat bread, and they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels, bearing spicery and balm and myrrh, and going to carry it down to Egypt. And Judah said unto his brethren, What profit is it that we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him. For he is our brother of flesh, and our flesh, and his brethren were content." So you see a sort of a conspiracy happening with the other brothers within the family of Israel. And here, and here we see the balm, right, brought from Gilead. And later on we see in Jeremiah, this following verse, "Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why is then not the health of the daughter of my people recovered?" And it talks about the place of Judea. This is a study worth a study, right? The balm of Gilead. This is basically also it points to Jesus, right? This. And balm and myrrh is the spiceries that myrrh was brought by one of the what was it, Magi that came to Jesus when he was born.
Yep. Hold on. I like spicery.
This one.
Yeah, I like spicery. I like the way it's stated there. Yes.
Yeah, they came, and you know what Gilead meant, right? So, perpetually fountain, ever-going fountain, and heap of testimony. Well, so it must be a good place where it comes from. Huh?
Yeah, well, they could have just said spices, but no, they said spicery.
It's even more than that, I suppose, then, huh?
I like it.
Spices, yeah. Okay, and then we go to the next passages, and then there passed by, then there passed by Midianites, merchantmen, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites. The descendants, the Ishmaelites were the descendants of Abraham with his bondwoman Hagar. Right? People forget usually what. I want to keep that in mind all the time. Who are we dealing with, right? When we talk about these people. So they sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they brought Joseph into Egypt. In the Bible, it says that the 9 brothers, Reuben wasn't present at the time, didn't sell Joseph, but only intended to sell him. They just left him in the pit, and the Midianites, and those are the descendants of Abraham with his wife Keturah, took him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites. But then I go to the book of Jasher, and then we read the following passages. "And the sons of Jacob hearkened to the Midianites, and they sold their brother Joseph to them for 20 pieces of silver. And Reuben their brother was not with them. And the Midianites took Joseph and continued their journey to Gilead. They were going along the road, and the Midianites repented of what they had done in having purchased the young man. And one said to the other, What is this thing that we have done in taking this youth from the Hebrews, who is of the comely appearance and well favored? Perhaps this youth was stolen from the land of the Hebrews, and why then have we done this thing? And if we should be sought for and found in our hands, we shall die through him. Now surely hardly and powerful men have sold him to us, the strength of one of whom you saw this day. Perhaps they stole him from his land and their might and with their powerful arm, and have therefore sold him to us to the small value which we gave unto them. So again, the Midianites came from Gilead, or went to Gilead again. So they went to the Ishmaelites were coming from Gilead, and these Midianites were going to Gilead. So if that is basically meaning this, right, the heap of testimony or perpetual fountain, it is sort of a important place, right? So spiritually speaking, the Midianites were having conscience problems while the Ishmaelites were not, because they went to Egypt. So continuing in the book of Jasher, and whilst they were thus discoursing together, they looked, and behold, the company of Ishmaelites, which was coming at first, and which the sons of Jacob saw, was advancing towards the Midianites. And the Midianites said to each other, "Come, let us sell this youth to the company of Ishmaelites who are coming toward us, and we will take him for a little, and we gave for him, and we will be delivered from his evil." And they did so, and they reached the Ishmaelites, and the Midianites sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, which they had given for him to his brethren. And the Midianites went on their road to Gilead, and the Ishmaelites took Joseph, and they let him ride upon one of the camels, and they were leading him to Egypt. So we get a little bit more information in Jasher. Of course, if you just go by the Bible, I think that we have enough information to go by, but then again, I think this is interesting to have thoughts about.
It seems consistent. So it's consistent with the scripture, so it provides a little background. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. So you can sort of ponder about that.
Mm-hmm. I think. Yeah.
So again, right, perpetual fountain, heap of testimony. So we see that Joseph is first sold to the descendants of Abraham and Keturah, and then he's sold to the descendants of Abraham and Hagar, the Ishmaelites. It's funny how that after a couple of generations go by, that people they did recognize each other, but they have little to do with one another. Like it's two separate people groups, right? It's interesting. So in Genesis 10, verse 7, and the sons of Ham, Cush and Mizraim, and Put in Canaan. So these were the ones. No, let me say it this way. So Mizraim is basically Egypt, right? The Ishmaelites were going to Egypt, which is Mizraim. And Mizraim means double stronghold or double distress. So I think, well, so the Ishmaelites weren't going to Gilead for the fountain, a perpetual fountain, like going to God, but they went to the other way, going to double stronghold and double distress. So they brought Joseph basically in this situation, and Egypt is therefore a type of the world, right? So like every time we see, well, come out of Egypt or come out of Babylon, sort of also in sort of Egypt, even worse. So Egypt is more like, a bad place, but I think Babylon is even worse. So that it's interesting to see how things are laid out and where things came from, because we know that Ham and his offspring, Canaan especially, they were cursed, right? And so Ham is basically an offspring of Mizraim is basically an offspring of Ham. So that is not a good branch out of Noah. So Joseph is now in the world, the type of the world, and this turns out to be prophetic, as we discover later. So again, we go back to Jacob's trouble. I call it Jacob's trouble because he had to divide his family into two camps. Ones he loved, he put most hindermost. I like this word, but I just found it in the Bible, but I don't know that if it's used much in English. Is it?
No, it's not, but you know what it is when it's put in context and hindermost. Yeah, it makes sense. Yep.
What is a word that you could use if you say, well, you put them last?
You put them in the rear with the gear.
In the rear. Yeah, I didn't think of that word. I know that word, but I didn't think of that. Well, I thought let's keep it like biblical and put this word.
Yeah, it's more dignified that way.
It sounds great, doesn't it? The hindermost. I like it. I like that word. So he did this to keep them safe, right? And and he finally, the conclusion is basically he ends up losing his most beloved son, right? I mean, the ones that he put behind because he loved Joseph the most of all his sons, he ends up losing to Egypt. But we learn later by further reading that the story of Joseph, him being in Egypt, was for a good cause. God always seems able to turn a bad event into a good one or situation. And it doesn't end there. There's another division taking place. This time it's not with persons, but with whole tribes. So now we go to this spiritual division first, because God usually gives us an insight into what he's going to do later. So first we see the foreshadow in Deuteronomy 11, verse 26 till 32. Behold, I set before you this day a blessing and a curse. A blessing if you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you this day. And a curse if you will not obey the commandments of the Lord your God, but turn aside out of the way which I command you this day, to go after other gods which ye have not known. And it shall come to pass when the Lord thy God hath brought thee in unto the land whither thou goest to possess it, that thou shalt put the blessing upon Mount Gerizim and the curse upon Mount Ebal this day. So I'm going to go and continue. And they not on the other side of the are they not on the other side of Jordan, by the way where the sun goeth down in the land of the Canaanites, which dwell in the campaign over against Gilgal, beside the plains of Moreh? For ye shall pass over Jordan to go in to possess the land which the Lord your God giveth you, and ye shall possess it and dwell therein. And ye shall observe to do all the statutes and judgments which I set before you. God sets conditions for his blessing, right, in these passages, and later on. He also mentions curses. He splits the tribes into two groups, and the Levites will be in the middle. And there's also the priests, basically. There's a lot of things in here in the sense of on the other side of the Jordan, a body of water again. And the plains of Moreh, we'll read later a passage where Abraham sort of had a sort of an altar or something placed there. And I think we'll go over that scripture later. So earlier in Deuteronomy 27, verse 1, Moses prophesies over the children of Israel to keep the commandments a couple of times. Verse 1, and Moses and with the elders of Israel commanded the people, saying, keep all the commandments which I command you to this day. And again in verse 9, and Moses and the priests, the Levites, spake unto Israel, all Israel, saying, take heed and hearken, O Israel, this day, hearken, O Israel, this day thou art become the people of the Lord thy God. Thou shalt therefore obey the voice of the Lord thy God, and do his commandments and his statutes, which I command this day. So we go again to Mount Ebal and Gerizim, and God now demands the laws to be kept and his statutes after the tribes pass over the Jordan. I think it's a typology for baptism because it's a body of water again, right? Every time they pass a body of water, a different sort of situation happens. There's some different things happening then. Because in the verses Moses said to the congregation in Deuteronomy 27:2 and 3, and it shall be on the day when ye shall pass over Jordan unto the lands which the Lord your God giveth thee, that thou shalt set up great stones, and plaster them with plaster. And thou shalt write upon them all the words of this law, when thou art passed over, that thou mayest go unto the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, and the land that floweth with milk and honey, as the Lord God of thy fathers hath promised thee. So there's a sort of when they passed the Jordan, all these laws or statute that God sort of says, well, keep this and do that and hold to this, are sort of now set in plaster. In Deuteronomy, the law was written in stone. It is prophesied in Jeremiah that the law will be written on our hearts, and our stony hearts will be taken out. Jeremiah 31, verse 33. But this shall be a covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, saith the Lord, I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts. And I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And then we go to Ezekiel, and Ezekiel 11, verse 19. And I will give them one heart, and I will put a new spirit within you. And I shall take the stony heart out of their flesh, and will give them a heart of flesh. Interesting, huh? And then Ezekiel 36, a new heart also I will give you, and a new spirit I put in within you. And I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and I will give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and ye shall keep my judgments and do them. And ye shall dwell in the land that I gave to your fathers, and ye shall be my people, and I will be your God. So basically, it's sort of repeated here. The bit that that was sort of put in stone was basically a foreshadow of what God will later do with the people that He loves, and yeah, you have to basically be baptized and get a new spirit and a new heart. And then in 2 Corinthians 3, for as much as ye are manifestly declared to be the epistle of Christ, ministered by us, written not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God, not in tables of stone, but in fleshly tables of the heart. In Hebrews, this is the New Testament, in Hebrews 8, verse 10 to 11. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws in their mind and write them in their hearts. And I will be to them a God, and they shall be my people. Be to me a people. And they shall not teach every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for all shall know me, from the least to the greatest. And I think it's interesting that it says, House of Israel. So in the passage of Deuteronomy 27:2, and it shall be on the way when ye shall pass over Jordan unto the lands which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Well, the definition of Jordan is, right, and I get that from the internet, of course. While the word Jordan is used today for the Jordan River as well as the nation of Jordan, in the Bible this word is only used for the river. The Jordan River is a 156 mile long river that runs from north to south and flows through the Sea of Galilee to the Dead Sea. In Hebrew, this name is spelled Yarden. You can see the Strong's number. This word is derived from the Hebrew, whatever that means. And these are the letters that they use, which means to go down or to descend. So the name Yarden means descender. So it's a type for when you pass over, in other words, you die, you will be in heaven, God's kingdom. In heaven there will be no iniquity, no nastiness, so righteousness will be our nature. So the baptism has always been about the renewal of the mind, renewal of spirit, indwelling of God's spirit, not living under the law, but having the law in your heart, so you won't transgress. So here you see the little picture of how that looks. The River Jordan basically runs from here to the Dead Sea. This is the River Jabbok, I think, and this is the River Jordan. And I noticed that every time a protagonist in the Bible crosses a river or a body of water, something important happens. Now, well, let's give a summary. Moses with the Red Sea, Joshua, the Jordan. So the Red Sea parted. The Jordan also parted for Joshua. Jacob, he crossed the Jabbok stream between Menahem and Penuel. And also Elijah and Elisha passed the Jordan. So crossing a body of water is mentioned many times in the Bible, and it has to do with the cleansing or washing of someone, a baptism. So we go over Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim. So on Mount Ebal, the curses were shouted, and these shall stand upon the Mount of Ebal to curse: Reuben, Gad, Asher, Zebulun, Dan, and Naphtali. And the Levite shall speak and say unto all the men of Israel with a loud voice, and then it continues. And then in Deuteronomy 27, verse 11 and 12, and Moses charged the people of the same day, saying, these shall stand upon the Mount of Gerizim to bless the people when you come over the Jordan, Simeon and Levi and Judah and Issachar, and Joseph and Benjamin. Now, well, these names, of course, we know that these have meanings. So I thought it would be nice to sort of see how that looked like, if it made sense. So on Mount Ebal, the curse is pronounced to Mount Gerizim. And then it says, with the name meanings, surely Yahweh has looked upon my afflictions. How fortunate, happy am I. God has endowed me with a good gift. My husband will dwell with me. God has judged me. With great wrestlings have I wrestled and prevailed. So this makes up a nice story of its own. And then we go to Mount Gerizim for the blessing. It says, because Yahweh has heard that I was hated, he therefore given me this son. Now this time will my husband be joined to me. Now I will praise Yahweh. God has given me my wages. Yahweh shall add to me the son of his right hand, or, because Benjamin had basically two sayings, or thou shalt have this son also. And this seems to be a complete sort of story of its own too. But we have two differences. Right? We have here there has taken place a judgment, and here there has been given wages. So I think it's very interesting, and I think that it's good to sort of meditate on this. What really happened with this division. So basically they have two distinct spiritual paths to go for each of them, right? This band and this band.
Can I stop you? Maybe I'm wrong. I was just going to say this. Isn't there like a valley in between these mountains where one could scream and the other one could hear?
Yep, that's this.
Yeah. It's a good thing we had a pre-presentation meeting, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I walked into that one. I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah, it's a natural amphitheater. I took this picture off the internet. This was already formed here, but yeah, a speaker's voice could be heard on both sides. Likewise, the shouts of a crowd on Gerizim could be heard on Ebal and vice versa. We got Mount Gerizim, Mount Ebal. And this is, in the middle, is Shechem. The city, Shechem. Now, interesting, Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim, so they are situated, Mount Ebal is on the north, right? And Mount Ebal was shouting the curses downwards, right, to Mount Gerizim. And Mount Gerizim was shouting the blessing upwards to Mount Ebal. So we got south and north. This is not by accident. I think that God never does anything by accident. So keep this in mind. I might bring this up in later presentations as well. So another picture, which is you can see it a little bit from above. You see how the large city is in between here. This is Shechem. So we got Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal. You can see that it's sort of like curved here, and it's very interesting. So it says here that there's also a altar. They found remnants of altars on, I think, either side a little bit. One was with stone and something else on the other side. So they knew that this was an important place. And the Ark of the Covenant rested here at one time. Yeah, I really love this picture. I mean, these two mounts and stuff, really great. So Shechem is first mentioned in Genesis 12, verse 6 to 7. And Abraham passed through the land unto the place of Shechem, they call it a little bit different, unto the plain of Moreh. And the Canaanite that was then in the land. And the Lord appeared unto Abraham and said, unto thy seed I will give this land. And he builded an altar unto the Lord, who appeared unto him. So Abraham, and then they say here the plain of Moreh, right? So he built an altar. Like I said in the previous bit, I didn't really remember if it was an altar or something else that he did, but he made an altar. So you can see that God gives us sort of places in the Bible, and then you have to sort of remember them later, because the tribes will come back to that place, and then something else important happens there. In this case, basically this prophecy was fulfilled because they came back to Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim. So Shechem became part of the promised land of Israel. Joshua 21 says, and the families of the children of Kohath, the Levites, which remained of the children of Kohath, even they had the cities of their lot out of the tribe of Ephraim. And they gave them Shechem and the suburbs in Mount Ephraim to be a city and of refuge for the slayer, and Gezer with her suburbs. So Shechem was given to the Kohath Levites, and then the whole lot of land was basically part of Ephraim. So Shechem was a place where Joseph's remains were buried. It says here in Joshua 24, verse 32, and the bones of Joseph, which the children of Israel brought out of Egypt, buried they in Shechem, in a parcel of ground which Jacob bought of the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for 100 pieces of silver, and it became the inheritance of the children of Joseph. During the time of the divided kingdom of Israel, Shechem was the capital of the northern kingdom for a while. And in 1 Kings 12, verse 1, and Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel were come to Shechem to make him king. So it was an important place for a long time. So we see God reaffirming what will happen when the tribes of Israel will not keep the commandment. He lets them shout out the curses to the south and the blessings to the north. And I find it very interesting and telling. Keep this in mind, and I will bring this up in later presentations. God always lets us know what he wants from us, and he will give us a prophetic picture of it. Now another division, the second division in Israel happens. So in 1 Kings 11, verse 1 to 4, but King Solomon loved many strange women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, and Hittites, of the nations concerning which the Lord said unto the children of Israel, you shall not go into them, neither shall they come in unto you. For surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. Solomon clave unto these in love. And he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wife turned away his heart. For it came to pass when Solomon was old that his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect with the Lord, his God, as was the heart of David his father. I mean, I have to laugh at this, but 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines. Whew. Would you be able to do that, John? Have 700 wives?
When I was 16 or 18.
Where would you house these women?
Yeah.
And how would you tell them apart, right?
You wouldn't.
Yeah. Did he have one for breakfast and the other one in the evening? I mean,
yeah.
It's. Did he do that?
I have no idea.
Exactly. So we have basically the offspring of the children of Lot here, the Ammonites and the Moabites, right? We got people from of Esau, right? That's Edom. And then Zidonians, I have to see what their heritage might have been, but the Hittites and Zidonians, a strange sort of company of people, and also a daughter of the Pharaoh. I mean, that was Egypt, right? So how many offspring did Solomon have? You would think.
I have no idea.
If he has 1,000 sort of women, they all had one kid, or maybe even two, that would sort of exponential be a lot of people, I suppose. Yeah. So that's what happened with Solomon. But yeah, I think that God wasn't sort of agreeing with that, because it says in 1 Kings 11, and Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord and went not fully after the Lord, as did David his father. Then did Solomon build a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, and the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the children of Ammon. And likewise did he for all his strange wives, which burnt incense and sacrificed unto their gods. And the Lord was angry with Solomon, because his heart was turned from the Lord God of Israel, which had appeared unto him twice, and had commanded him concerning this thing, that he should not go after other gods. But he kept not that which the Lord commanded. So he was warned twice. So Solomon was warned twice, but he still went after strange wives and other gods that he didn't know. And then we come across Chemosh of the abomination of Moab, and Molech of the abomination of the children of Ammon. These are the offspring of the daughters of Lot, and they came out of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yep.
So I think that's a bad branch, right? I spoke in the last presentation about the division that happened between Abraham and Lot, and it might have been like sounding strange to bring that up, because Lot was still a good man, and because he was saved out of Sodom and Gomorrah. But now you can see that that because he was living in that rich place, which what was a bad place basically, his daughters brought forth even the abominations out of them again, right? From these the children of Moab and the Ammonites and the Moabites. So you can see that a little transgression can amount to a great deal in future times. So in 1 Kings 11, where it says, "Wherefore the Lord said unto Solomon, Forasmuch as this is done of thee, and thou hast not kept my covenant, my statutes, which I have commanded thee, I will surely rend the kingdom from thee, and I will give it to thy servant. Notwithstanding, in thy days I will not do it for David thy father's sake, but I will rend it out of the hand of thy son. Howbeit, I will not rend away all the kingdom, but I will give one tribe to thy son for David's my servant's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, which I have chosen." And in 1 Kings 11, I didn't finish this. This was not good. Okay. "And Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, an Ephrathite of Zerida, Solomon's servant, whose mother's name was Zeruiah, a widow woman, even he lifted up his hand against the king. And this was the cause that he lifted up his hand against the king. Solomon built Millo and repaired the breaches of the city of David his father. And the man Jeroboam was a mighty man of valor, and Solomon, seeing the young man that he was industrious, he made him ruler over all the charge of the house of Joseph. And it came to pass at that time when Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem, that the prophet Ahijah the Shilonite found him in the way, and he had clad himself with a new garment. And they two were alone in the field. And Ahijah caught the new garment and that was on him and rent it in 12 pieces. Well, Jeroboam means may the people increase. Nebat means look or aspect of look. Sarida means cooling. And Sarua means leprous, wasp, or hornet. So it's kind of interesting to see what these words mean. Sometimes you can sort of see that it might not be going in a good way eventually. But okay. And Ahijah means brother of Yah, and Shiloh means whose it is, or Tranquility Town, or Fair Haven, or Pleasantville. Wasn't it you that also lived in Pleasantville?
You remembered that, didn't you? Yeah, somebody seen a picture of where I live, and they called it Pleasant Valley Sunday.
Yeah, that's the thing. So, maybe you should rename it Shiloh then.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, you can see those sort of by the names, right? That this is a good man that is basically a prophet to bring a message. Well, Jeroboam, you can see what he is going to do in the future, right? The people will increase. But yeah, cooling means that it will be later on. He will, right? He was from Sarida, but he must not been that sort of passionate, maybe. And his wife, his mother was a widow woman. Okay, well, without a husband. So usually when a widow is mentioned in the Bible, it means that they don't have a God, right? The God, the Father, right? They were married to Jesus or whatever. That's something, right? It means that they are sort of spiritually not complete, I would say. So I find it interesting that I was sort of like surprised when it meant leprous and wasp, and who would call your daughter or your wife Zeruiah, right? Then.
Do you think that those names meant that at the time, or did the names come about after? The meanings, I'm sorry.
That's a good thought. I think Well, I think that the whole Hebrew scriptures are usually spiritually, how do you say that? Spiritually inspired, right? So, but they mean something in a symbology. Everything that you read in Hebrew scriptures has a deeper meaning. Unlike, I think, the more the Greek ones that are like more, it says what it is, right? Sort of thing. Because if you read the things with Paul, if he's speaking something about the laws, it's kind of a yes or no thing, you know. And with the Israelites, there's more meaning to it. There's more to it. I hope that there was another sort of reason why they gave them these names to people. I hope that these people didn't call someone leopard.
It's a good question that I wanted to ask. Not you, but I've just wanted to ask that question in certain instances. I've seen, did the meaning of the names come about after? Not only names of people, but names, describing certain things particularly. It's always, I've always thought about it. It's very interesting. I don't know if anyone has that answer. If you do, go ahead and put some comments in the comments section, not in the chat, because I'm not looking at the chat. But if you guys understand what I mean, did the names come about after?
If you go back to the 12 tribes, where they basically named their children after the exclamation of the women having these children, you could sort of think that they had meanings. The names had meanings, that they gave that name to that person because of an exclamation.
A certain
I think
thing.
that the Indians in America, right, did the same thing, like Dances with Wolves.
Yeah. I think I think it's a good analogy. Yeah, it's a deep subject right there. I'd just like somebody to answer it, and it's not an all-encompassing thing, right? Not every single case is the case. What I'm saying is there are certain cases where the names or the meanings of the names, not proper names, but did they change? To take the meaning afterwards. So I hope I articulated that correctly. You know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yep. Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, we go to the Prophet of Hydra again, and it says here in Kings 11, in verse 31, and he said to Jeroboam, "Take the 10 pieces, for thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel: Behold, I will rend the kingdom out of the hands of Solomon, and will give 10 tribes to thee. But he shall have 1 tribe for my servant David's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, the city which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel. Howbeit I will not take the whole kingdom out of his hand, but I will make him prince of all the days of his life for David's my servant's sake, whom I choose because I kept my commandments and my statutes." So you can see that God had a purpose now to split the tribes up. "But I will take the kingdom out of his son's hand, and I will give it unto thee even 10 tribes. And unto his son I will give 1 tribe, that David my servant may have a light always before me in Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen me to put my name there. And I will take thee, and thou shalt reign according to all that thy soul desireth, and shalt be king over Israel." So the name Israel is basically transferred to Jeroboam. So Rehoboam means enlarges the people. Funny how both of these names, the Jeroboam and Rehoboam, means to increase the people. This is enlarge, make bigger, or make higher, and the other increases the people. So Rehoboam already had Judah, and he gets another tribe, right? He says, basically, I will give one tribe that David's servant may have a light always away before me in Jerusalem. You have to know that Jerusalem was allotted to the tribe of Benjamin. People think that it was in the area of the lot of Judah, but the Jerusalem was given to the tribe of Benjamin. I think that not many people know this or have noticed this. So I say, hey, like a question mark, King of Israel, right? We have to follow what the Bible says, right? Jeroboam, the 10 tribes, that was Israel. Or they transferred the name Israel, at least to them. One tribe, the tribe of Benjamin, was given by God to the house of Judah. In 1 Kings 11, verse 37. And unto his son I will give thee one tribe, right? And so I have a light always before me. Although Jerusalem was in the territory allocated to the tribe of Benjamin, in Joshua 18:18, it remained under the independent control of the Jebusites. And it points to the city being within the territory of Benjamin, while in Joshua 15:63 it implies that the city was within the territory of Judah. In any event, Jerusalem remained an independent Jebusite city until it was finally conquered by David in century 11th. I don't know what this means, by the way. But again, I have this from a source. 11th century BC and made into the capital of the United Kingdom of Israel. After the breakup of the United Monarchy, Jerusalem continued as the capital of the northern kingdom of Judah. So we got the kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of Israel.
The southern kingdom of Judah.
Yeah.
You said northern kingdom of Judah. It says southern.
Oh, sorry, southern. Yeah, this is southern and northern, right? This is the north. This is the south. Now remember, when we were on Mount Ephraim, in Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal, that the blessings were sent from the south to the north, and the curses were sent from the north to the south. Did you know this?
Yeah, you just said it a little while ago.
Yeah, but did you know this beforehand? Because that's the whole thing with the Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal, that it was even more, even the situation, the situated mounts, and how the one was in the north and the one was in the south, and the blessing being shouted across.
All right.
That's very important.
All right. So what's your question? Did I know what?
Did you know that about this sort of like a little mystery, I think, that the curses were shouted upwards and downwards?
Well, I knew that's a silly question when I interrupted before and I premeditated what you were going to say. You figure I had at least come across it once.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. Did Chuck Missler say anything about this? Was there a teaching on this with him?
Chuck, I don't know if Chuck went. I can't recall. I can't remember.
Yeah, he had many presentations. If you have to go through this, I think it takes you a year or something.
Yeah, it takes long. Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah. Well, I want also the audience and the people listening to keep this in mind, because in a later presentation I will go over this again. Why this is important. You have to sort of keep things in mind for later things to happen, and then you think, now I know why, or now I see more, because the types that God gives us in the Bible, or this foreshadowing that He gives in the Bible, are so deep, basically, that you would miss it if you don't pay attention to it, or being pointed to it. Okay, and then in Kings 11, Kings 11 is that chapter is for me is very, very telling, very interesting. And it shall be, if thou hearken unto all that I command thee, and wilt walk in my ways, and do that is right in my sight, to keep my statutes and my commandments, as David my servant did, that I will be with thee and build thee a sore house, as I built for David, and I will give Israel unto thee. And I will for this afflict the seed of David, but not forever. Solomon sought therefore to kill Jeroboam, and Jeroboam arose and fled into Egypt, unto Shishak, the king of Egypt, and was in Egypt until the death of Solomon. So also another one that flees into Egypt. Jesus fled into Egypt, and he does too, right? I think that even David also fled to Egypt once or twice. I find this also an interesting scripture where it said, for this I will afflict the seed of David, but not forever. Okay, so who's the seed of David?
You asking me? Go ahead.
Well, do you think? Do you know?
Who is the seed of David?
Mm-hmm.
You'd have to go down the what are they called?
Genealogy.
Yes, the genealogies. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, well, eventually, of course, a branch leads to Jesus.
Of course.
Yeah. But he also said, for the tribe of Judah, there will always be one holding the scepter.
That's correct.
Ruling, kingship.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So the seed of David, God says, well, okay, I'm going to continue with the seed of David, right, afterwards. But apparently, he will afflict them, but not forever.
Yeah, but when did he afflict when did he afflict the seed of David? This is a timing thing also.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, huh? That's the basically thing. Well, we know about the kings that come after Rehoboam and
oh, they were terrible.
Yes. Yeah. Both of them didn't do that great, did they?
No, they didn't. Nope.
I mean, the house of Israel wasn't that good, but the house of Rehoboam was also, or the what came after the house of Judah also wasn't good. In the beginning, they kept a couple of statutes and some feasts and stuff, but then it gradually became worse and worse, right? So and if we go to later on where they are going to go to Babylon, right, into captivity, the house of Judah, with the house of Benjamin and the Levites that were in there. Well, I think the kings weren't treated that well. I mean, one was, his eyes were stabbed out and the nasty things, man.
Yeah, pretty bad. The kings, those kings were all of them were knuckleheads. I mean, really, really bad.
Yeah. Knuckle draggers. I like that word too. Yeah. So, but this is interesting, right? But he didn't want to do it to Solomon, right? But I have no good feeling of where Solomon ended up.
No, it's not a good. No, it's not a good place. Not the ending. No.
Not a good ending, right? And then he was so wise. He had so much knowledge. That man was the most knowledgeable man, they say, according to the scriptures, on earth.
Yep. Knowledgeable and the richest man on earth, right? Yeah. Solomon. Yeah. Big time.
But then you can see what riches and knowledge about being a good judge or being, he knew everything about nature. I believe that he knew about things.
Yep.
And so that knowledge doesn't basically bring you to a good end,
right?
Necessarily,
right? Just a tragic story of Solomon. Really, really tragic. I cringe at it.
Yeah. Well, didn't he also had a book of the Bible that was it is not is it Lamentations? I don't know the English word for it. Lamentations, I think, or um, something where you see that sort of like a depressing sort of amount of text that you if you read it that you think, okay, well, it doesn't amount whatever we do, it holds no joy or why do it, because it doesn't amount to anything. I forget what the book is, but I think that they say that he wrote that book. I will bring that up later. Hopefully, maybe you can look that up afterwards. Okay, and and the time that Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel was 40 years. And Solomon slept with his fathers and was buried in the city of David his father, and Rehoboam his son reigned in his stead. And in 1 Kings 12, and Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel were come to Shechem to make him king. And it came to pass when Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who was yet in Egypt, heard of it, for he was fled from the presence of King Solomon, and Jeroboam dwelt in Egypt, that they sent and called him. And Jeroboam and all the congregation of Israel came and spake unto Rehoboam, saying, Shechem means shoulder, personal interest. It's also very interesting. Thy father made our yoke grievous. Now therefore make thou the grievous service of thy father, and this heavy yoke which he put upon us lighter, and we will serve thee. And he said unto them, Depart yet for 3 days again, then come again to me. And the people departed. And King Rehoboam consulted the old men that stood before Solomon his father while he yet lived, and said, How do ye advise that I may answer this people? And they spake unto him, saying, If thou wilt be a servant unto this people this day, and wilt serve them, and answer them, and speak good words to them, then they will be thy servants forever. But he forsook the counsel of the old men, which they had given him, and consulted with the young men that they were grown up with him, and which stood before him. And he said unto them, What counsel give ye that we may answer these people, who have spoken to me, saying, Make the yoke which thy father did put upon us lighter? And the young man that was grown up with him spake unto him, saying, Thus shalt thou speak unto this people that spake unto thee, saying, Thy father made our yoke heavy, but make thou it lighter unto us. Thus shalt thou say unto them, My little finger shall be thicker than thy father's loins. And now, whereas my father did laid you with a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father has chastised you with whips, I will chastise you with scorpions.
Goodness
so
gracious.
What we see is that great, huh?
Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah. So when we listen to the older folk, right? Let me go back one bit, and you can see that they speak about if thou wilt be a servant unto these people, right? It starts differently, right? It's make yourself a servant to the people, and they will serve you, right? Be a good king, right? It's sort of dependent on one another, right? The people depend on the king, and the king on the people. And if you go here, then they don't speak about that. It's like, okay, I'm more powerful than you, and I will just chastise you with scorpions. I mean, that wouldn't go over well, right?
Oh, just smite them.
Exactly. So when all Israel saw that the king hearkened not unto them, the people answered the king, saying, What portion have we in David? Neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse. To our tents, O Israel. Now see to thine own house, David. So Israel departed unto their tents. But as for the children of Israel, which dwelt in the cities of Judah, Rehoboam reigned over them. So you have they say, well, what portion do we have in David? Right? They have nothing to do anything with the house, with the kings, because, yeah, they just go away, right? They don't want to comply to that nonsense with paying tribute. And here it says, well, for the children of Israel dwelt in the cities of Judah. Well, we see on the map that Judah had a certain plot of land. Simeon was in the middle of Judah, so that might have mingled. The tribe of Benjamin was mainly in Jerusalem. So, and you had also the Levites that were sort of allotted within the cities within Judah and Simeon and the tribe of Benjamin. So Israel rebelled against the house of David unto this day. Right? Unto this day. That's very interesting. How can I say unto this day when you don't know what's going to happen? So this might be a prophecy. Huh? And it came to pass when all Israel heard that Jeroboam was come again, that they sent and called him unto the congregation and made him king over all Israel. There was none that followed the house of David, but the tribe of Judah only. So wait a minute, we got now a house of David, right? And you can see that the name transfer, Israel, was given to Jeroboam. So here we have the maps. You can see that this is the house, this is Judah, right? Later on called Judea. Simeon was here. It was a small tribe, and it might have sort of been assimilated by Judah. And it said so that's why I went over the presentation previously with the prophesying over each son of Jacob, but also over the tribes of Jacob that Moses did. Simeon was not mentioned by Moses. Right? It was already absorbed. They sort of, right? Or it was a prophecy that it would be absorbed within Judah. So we have Judah and Benjamin and Ephraim lies on this side. So you see that this is a sort of important place because Jerusalem is like here. And yeah, well, Benjamin's not a huge tribe, but also Ephraim is not that big. But it was prophesied that it would be big, right? It would be a great multitude of people. It said something with the 10,000 of Ephraim and the thousands of Manasseh. Well, duh. This is not happening yet. So what's up with that? Huh? So Judah gets these 4 tribes basically, but Simeon must have gone all over the place. And then the later map looks more like this. Like this is the kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of Israel. And when Rehoboam was come to Jerusalem, he assembled all the houses of Judah with the tribe of Benjamin and 180,000 chosen men, which were warriors, to fight against the house of Israel, to bring the kingdom again to Rehoboam the son of Solomon. But the word of God came unto Shemaiah, the man of God, saying, Speak unto Rehoboam the son of Solomon, king of Judah, and unto all the house of Judah and Benjamin, and to the remnant of the people, saying, Thus saith the Lord, You shall not go up, nor fight against your brethren, children of Israel. Return every man to his house, for this thing is from me. They hearkened therefore to the word of the Lord, and returned to depart according to the word of the Lord. So this thing is of me, because we knew this, right? Because Ahijah the Shilonite said that had sort of prophesied that already to Jeroboam, that the houses would be divided. It was of God. So Jeremiah, that's the prophet here mentioned, Yah has heard. So that seems interesting. These prophets have many good names. So actually we have now 3 houses. Right? We have the house of Judah, we have the house of Israel, and the house of David. So in a later presentation, and I still haven't finished that, but I'm going to try like crazy to get it done soon. I will go over what happened to these houses. So I want to briefly mention from an early division, Edom versus Jacob, that there is an adversary, right? So when Jacob said, well, I'm now two bands, why was that? Because there was an adversary there. There was Esau, his brother, that was likely to kill him or kill people from his family. And we see here now in Kings 11, that's why the chapter is so interesting, is that we see also adversaries being mentioned. And the Lord stirred up an adversary unto Solomon, Hadad the Edomite. Edomite, wow. Edom, Esau, Edomite here. And he was of the king's seed of Edom. And it came to pass when David was in Edom, and Joab, the captain of the host, was gone up to bury the slain, after he had smitten every male in Edom. For 6 months did Joab remain there with all Israel, until he had cut off every male in Edom. That Hadad fled, he and certain Edomites of his father's servants with him, to go into Egypt, Hadad being yet a little child. And they arose out of Midian, and came to Paran, and they took men with them out of Paran, and they came to Egypt, unto Pharaoh, king of Egypt, which gave him a house, and appointed him victuals, and gave him land. So an adversary was brought on, just as the type in the two bands. And Hadad found great favor in the sight of Pharaoh, so that he gave him unto his wife, the sister of his own wife, the sister of Taphanes, the queen. And the sister of Taphanes bare him Genubath, his son, whom Taphanes weaned in Pharaoh's house. And Genubath was in Pharaoh's household amongst the sons of Pharaoh. And when Hadad heard in Egypt that David slept with his fathers, and that Joab, the captain of the host, was dead, Hadad said to Pharaoh, let me depart, that I may go into my own country. So he came back. And let's see what Hadad means. The meaning of the name Hadad, non-study Bible lists observes no difference between two Hadads, because you have two Hadads in two separate stories. It reads fierceness. To a Hebrew audience, however, the name Hadad would have meant thunder or shout. And since Hadad was the region's storm god, very few would have ventured away from that interpretation. So it's interesting. Fierceness, thunder, shout. So Taphanes means head of ages. Interesting name. Genubath means theft. Okay. Let me go back to this a little bit, because I think this name is never mentioned afterwards. You never see it anywhere. Why is it so important that this name was mentioned? And that it means theft. Yeah, so maybe it's a sort of a signaling us to pay attention to what Hadad or the enemy, the adversary from Edomites, would be doing later. And since Genubath was sort of absorbed within the houses of Egypt, the pharaohs, so into the world, basically, that's very interesting to me. I don't want to make it too obvious yet, but I might get into this within other presentations. So my thoughts on these divisions. So the two bands division in Genesis 32 verse 7, Jacob dividing his company into two bands, represents God's plan or foresight, if you will, for the future. God the Bible gives us a message in a covert way. He divides his people into two camps, two bands, to protect them against the enemy, Esau, or Edom, the adversary. God gives his people protection from the adversary only if the people will keep these commandments. Usually God, the Bible, will give us a foreshadow of what he's going to do. Next, he brings up a prophet that will convey his message to the people or person. The prophets were Elijah the Shalomonite and Shemaiah. The first brought Jeroboam the prophecy, and Shemaiah brought the message to the king of Judah, Rehoboam. So that's the end of my presentations. So the two houses are divided, and in another presentation I will go over what happened to these three houses and what the role is of the adversary. So to be continued.
Outstanding.
So there's something to that, right? So I want to emphasize, let me go over the map again, which I had here previously. I mean, when I went over the tribes and their prophecies over the tribes by Moses, by Jacob, right? The 10,000 of Ephraim and the thousands of Manasseh, right? That hasn't been fulfilled yet. So how could that be, right? Is God a liar? No. So I want to stress this a little bit more. Yeah.
Good.
So what do you think so far?
I can't wait till when you put it all together. That's what I'm waiting for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot of work because you also have to work without the Bible a little bit.
Yeah.
For things.
Yeah. There's a lot going on, so it requires you to put it together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is just the premise, basically. Huh? This is what we know from the Bible. There's some other blessings and curses that still have some sort of fulfilling to be had. Is that a sentence? Yeah. So
you can make it a sentence if you'd like.
Yeah. So it needs to some of these things still need to be fulfilled, and I think that with Ephraim, I don't think that that's fulfilled. I mean, they got double portion. Well, that a lot of land was not a double portion. Yeah, there's many other sort of prophecies still not fulfilled within. But the one that is fulfilled is basically in Solomon and David, that the promised land, which God promised to Abraham, Jacob, and Isaac, was from the river Euphrates to the borders of Egypt. That was fulfilled. And it has said that twice. I think in Joshua once, and it says that, and also in Kings, it says that it has been fulfilled. The promised land was always, all the promises of God were fulfilled to give them these allotted lands in the new land, new given land. But now we have to see what happens with the two bands, the two camps. God has a reason for that, doing this. It's coming together. And hopefully people wake up to that early.
Wake up early?
Yeah. Well, I think we're all late to the table.
I'm late to the table.
There is another prophecy that people will forget their identity. That Israel will forget their identity. And I think that it has. So that's it for me today. I don't know how long I took to do this. 1.5 hours?
Yeah, pretty snappy, an hour and a half.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No? What do you think?
Like I said, it's interesting. I like some of the things that you went over. I want to see it all put together because I start getting a little confused with all the names of the people and the places.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, well, I like to know what names mean and what the places mean and where they are and whatever. And maybe it's too much, could be. But I want to still name them because there might be people just as interested in that as I am.
mhm.
That think, okay, wow, now that I know that it means this, I can now put it together with
Yep.
the next sentence,
Yep.
the next sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And I will repeat myself, especially with the 1 Kings 11 and 12. They will come up a lot next, because I want to stress that a couple of times, what happens and why it's so pivotal to mention. Because he didn't let us write this or let the people write that in the Bible for just like show.
Yeah, for no reason. It's there for a reason. I agree.
Yeah. So I hope that I get the time, because that's the thing. It takes a lot of time to make these presentations, even just in the format. It takes time, but that's a lot of time. But also the investigation that you put into this. It takes some time to do that. So next week there won't be a presentation, but I hopefully can pick it up the next again.
All right, guys. Next week, that means next Thursday, there will not be a presentation. And QE Live Tuesday is up on the chopping block too. So, but we'll see how it goes. So next week is
the chopping block.
Yeah, it's up on the chopping block because I got a conflict. I don't know if I can get out of it. So we'll have to see. Oh, the Adam Meekin sent you a super chat. From a timings point of view, that felt perfect, Betty.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Well, maybe the timing is correct now because people will have to wake up to certain things, I think. And hopefully my presentation will help with that. I hope that it will help.
So what presentation are you going to put it all together? This is number 6.
Yeah. You wanted me to do some word studies. Those I can sort of get together a little snappier. Is that a word? Snappier?
It definitely is.
So I might sort of mix it up with a couple of word studies, which just will sort of help support the things that I have done till this day.
Oh, yeah.
I think because you have the word study on staff and rod and staff.
Mm-hmm.
From Psalm 23, right? And it's in there. So that might be a shorter presentation, maybe. Then it won't be taking 1.5 hours. But it can support what I want to say with this. I have another presentation, The Bride of Christ, that I want to get out there. So that might support it.
There could be a lot of caveats with that presentation.
Yeah, and maybe not. Maybe it will sort of integrate very easily, right? So, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. The next because it will culminate in something that I hope people will understand my viewpoint. Still, I mean, I let it go what other people want to believe or what they get out of the Bible. I know that you have different views than I have, and I want to just bring my view across the footlight so that people can maybe see how and why I came to that understanding. But if it's not your understanding, it's your path. You have maybe a different path to walk than I have. And then, well, let's focus on the things that you have, the same thoughts on, and sort of put that together, and not sort of.
And we'll fight over the others.
Again?
And then we'll fight over the others.
Well, that's the thing, John. I don't think that we need to do that and make more divisions. I think that was not by God, right?
You want multiplications.
No, I think that God wanted to eventually come back together again, because he said that in Hosea with the two sticks, right? To put the two houses together again.
Yeah.
And also not only the houses, but the people, right? To form a body of Christ. Someone might be the hand, some might be the eye or the ears or the feet, right? We're all part of it. But what did you think about the hearts and the stones and
Yep, I liked it. Yep, I liked that. It was good. I remember reading through that with the flesh. Take the stone out of the flesh and replace it with flesh. I remember going through that at some point back in the past.
Yeah. So I think, okay, so he basically put it in stone then, right? On Mount Ebal I think it was. Although some say it was on the other mountain. But they had to make an altar and put the laws in there in the plaster, right? But God knew that plaster would basically disappear after a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't necessary to keep it in stone anymore. Right? It needed to be written on people's hearts. So, and he made sure that we would do that later. But yeah, you need to know those commandments. Right? What does he want from us? He wants us to be holy. He wants us to be holding to these 10 commandments. And why? Why is that? Because if you transgress, you can't be holy. Right? And then you can't get near to God because he's a consuming fire. You will be consumed.
Uh-oh.
It's not be a good thing, huh?
No.
Something else is a chopping block. Yeah.
I like spiceries and smiting.
Smite.
I'll smite you.
I found it to be a sort of a soft word. I thought, well, smite is like, but it has some fierceness in it, huh?
Yes, it does. Yes, surely does. Yes, it does. I like it.
Yeah, I didn't know what that mean, but years back, I didn't know what that mean, and I wrote that and read that, and I thought, huh, smite?
Yeah.
Smite? We have a word in Dutch that it's smijten, but it's throwing. Right? It's sort of like when you are sort of angry and in your anger you throw something down. We call that smijten.
That's close.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's close. I'll use it in a sentence. Adam, I will smite thee.
You smite Adam. You have your Superchat for crying out loud. Yeah. Yeah, it is a great sort of a hindermost. I mean, wow.
Yeah, that word impresses you. Yeah, I like some of the words in there. They're how would you want to put it? I don't want to say antiquated, but I think it provides so much character, right? I enjoy reading it like that.
Yeah, well, we are sort of like saying, okay, we are modern and we don't use these olden things and names and whatever. But if you don't repeat them or learn them, then you lose a little bit of your identity as well. I mean, the words have meanings. You're like that all the time. Words have meaning.
They do.
And you can't sort of after a while change the word completely and make it into something else,
right?
Which makes it all convoluted. Because if you read them back the olden texts, then you think, what's happening here?
Yeah.
Right? And how many times might that already have happened?
Yeah.
Within translations and texts.
Yes. Yep. That's why you got to do the word searches. You got to have somebody proficient in that, especially ancient Hebrew and the Greek. Yep. You have to have people that can ferret that stuff out. No doubt about it.
Yeah. Well, did you know that the Hebrew was sort of reinvented or restated? I think it was just in 1920s or something. Um, by a guy. Let me look that up. Was an Israeli guy.
Yeah, I remember you talking about him before.
Hebrew. Let me go. Father of the Hebrew language. His name is basically Eliezer ben Yehuda.
Yeah, Eliezer. That's the one.
Yeah, and he was born Eliezer Perlman, and he was in the Russian Empire in 1858.
Well,
so it was earlier, a little bit earlier.
They put him in the gulag.
Again?
Did they put him in the gulag?
No.
Oh.
Maybe they should have. I don't know. Well, he brought up his own son, just teaching him just the language of ancient Hebrew. So that guy only spoke that, right? And then he couldn't converse because he kept him sort of in solitude, only within his own house. And later on, he sort of built schools where they only studied the Hebrew, the modern Hebrew, and then the whole language started up again. So it's basically reinvented. It was gone, right? Like Latin was a dead language, so they had to make new sort of words for the modern things. Otherwise, they couldn't sort of converse in, everything in that ancient Hebrew. So they had to sort of add on, but yeah, it's basically new, right? You think, and it came beforehand. They spoke Yiddish, right? So it is interesting. There's a lot to be learned still.
All right, let's wrap it up. Final thought.
Well, I hope the audience enjoyed what I had to talk about, and I hope that people will sort of, do research on their own and see, or maybe study the Bible, read chapter 11, 1 Kings 11, and see what it really says, and think about it and what happened later with these people groups, right? Don't take it from me and just do your own research. So thanks for listening, and hopefully next time.
Thank you, Betty. Great presentation. Like you said, next Thursday will be a no-go, and also for QE Live next Tuesday. It's still tentative up in the air. Just be flexible. So hope you got a lot out of it, and we'll see you next time. Hang in there. Out.